Let's talk about something that's confusing and kind of painful. He tells you he loves you. He says it casually. He says it seriously. Maybe he even says it often. And on paper, everything looks fine. So why do you still feel alone sometimes? Why do you hang up the phone feeling unsettled? Why do you go to bed next to someone and still feel like something's missing? This is the part most women don't say out loud. You can be loved and still feel unseen. That feeling is subtle. It's not dramatic. It's not a big fight. It's not betrayal. It's quieter than that. It's when you explain something that hurt you, and he responds with logic instead of understanding. It's when you say, "That bothered me," and he says, "You're overthinking." It's when you share something vulnerable, and the moment passes too quickly. You nod. You move on. You tell yourself it's not a big deal. But inside, it felt like you were reaching out, and no one really grabbed your hand. Let's slow this down. Have you ever tried to explain why something small upset you? And halfway through explaining it, you started questioning yourself. Like maybe you are being too sensitive. Maybe you're asking for too much. Maybe you should just let it go. That right there is the beginning of feeling unseen. Because when your emotional experience isn't fully received, you start editing it. And when you start editing yourself, you slowly disappear inside the relationship. Now here's the confusing part. He might genuinely love you. He might show up in practical ways. He might be loyal. He might care. But emotional presence is different than emotional intention. You can love someone deeply and still not know how to emotionally hold them. And if you're someone who feels things deeply, who needs conversation, reassurance, connection, then surface-level love starts to feel lonely. Let me ask you something gently. When you're upset, do you feel comforted? Or do you feel managed? There's a difference. Comfort feels like, "I see why that hurt you. Tell me more. I'm here." Managing feels like, "It's not that serious. You're fine. Let's not make this a thing." Both might come from care, but only one feels like being seen. And when you're not emotionally seen consistently, you start carrying your feelings alone. That's where the loneliness begins. Not because he doesn't love you, but because your inner world isn't being fully met. Now this is where it gets deeper. Sometimes you don't even realize you feel unseen. You just feel slightly off, slightly distant, slightly disconnected, and you can't explain why. So next, we're going to talk about what happens after this stage. Because this is where many women start doing something very subtle. They start shrinking. Let's go a little deeper. You don't wake up one day and decide to shrink. It happens slowly, almost invisibly. The first time you say, "That kind of hurt," and he responds with, "You're overthinking." You pause. You tell yourself, "Okay, maybe I am." The second time you bring something up, and the conversation turns into you defending your feelings instead of expressing them. You hesitate the next time, and eventually, you start filtering yourself before you even speak. You think, "Is this worth bringing up? Will this turn into an argument? Am I being too emotional?" So instead of saying, "That bothered me," you say, "It's fine." Instead of saying, "I need more reassurance," you say nothing. Instead of saying, "I feel disconnected," you convince yourself you're just tired. That's shrinking. And it doesn't look dramatic. It looks mature. It looks calm. It even looks easygoing. But inside, you're slowly silencing parts of yourself. Let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever laughed something off that actually hurt? Have you ever changed the subject because you didn't want to seem too much? That's not peace. That's self-protection. When you don't feel emotionally received, your system learns. It's safer to be smaller. Now here, where it gets complicated. You might still be a good girlfriend. You still show up. You still care. You still support him. But you stop asking for what you need. And the more you stop asking, the more invisible you feel. Because being seen requires expression. And expression requires safety. If you don't feel safe, bringing your full emotional self into the relationship, you start editing it. And edited love never feels fulfilling. This is where a lot of women get confused. They think, why do I feel lonely? He's right here. But loneliness isn't about physical presence. It's about emotional access. You can sit next to someone every day and still feel like your inner world doesn't matter. And the scary part, if this goes on long enough, you start disconnecting from your own feelings too. You tell yourself, it's not that deep. I'm just sensitive. I shouldn't need this much. But your needs don't disappear just because you minimize them. They just go unmet. And that unmet feeling turns into quiet resentment or quiet sadness. Next, we're going to talk about what emotional loneliness inside a relationship actually looks like. Because it's not always obvious. This is the part that's hard to explain to other people. From the outside, everything looks normal. You have a relationship. You talk every day. Maybe you go on dates. Maybe he posts you. So when you say, I feel lonely, people don't get it. They think loneliness means being single. But emotional loneliness is different. It's when you're physically close, but emotionally distant. It's when conversations stay on the surface. You talk about work, school, plans, memes. But when it comes to your inner world, it feels awkward, rushed, uncomfortable. You might say something vulnerable like, I've been feeling kind of overwhelmed lately. And instead of curiosity, you get, you'll be fine. Don't stress so much. Why are you thinking like that? It's not cruel. It's just shallow. And shallow responses to deep feelings create quiet loneliness. Let me ask you something gently. When you're sad, do you feel understood? Or do you feel like you're explaining yourself? There's a difference between someone hearing your words and someone understanding your emotional experience. Understanding feels like, I can see why that would hurt. That makes sense. I'm here with you. Hearing without understanding feels like, okay, but what's the solution? And when you constantly feel like your emotions need to be solved instead of felt, you start keeping them to yourself. That's when emotional isolation begins. Now here's something important. He might genuinely care. He might just not have the emotional depth, or awareness, or experience to meet you where you are. But love without emotional attunement still feels empty. Because emotional attunement means he notices your tone change. He asks when you go quiet. He stays present when things feel uncomfortable. Without that, you start feeling like you're carrying the emotional weight alone. And carrying emotions alone in a relationship feels confusing. Because technically, you're not alone. But internally, you are. This is where many women start thinking, maybe I'm just too emotional. Maybe I need too much. But needing emotional connection isn't excessive. It's human. Next, we're going to separate something that changes everything. Love versus emotional safety. Because they're not the same thing. This is where everything starts to make sense. Someone can love you and still not make you feel emotionally safe. Those two things are not automatically connected. Love can be real, but emotional safety is about how your nervous system feels around someone. When you're emotionally safe, you don't rehearse your words before saying them. You don't calculate how much is too much. You don't brace yourself before bringing something up. You feel like you can be honest without being dismissed. Now let's slow this down. Think about the last time you were upset. Did you feel relaxed enough to explain it? Or did your body feel tense? Did you feel heard? Or did you feel like you had to justify your feelings? Emotional safety sounds like, I don't fully get it yet, but I want to understand. Tell me more. I care about how you feel. Emotional unsafety sounds like, why are you making this a thing? You're too sensitive. Can we not do this right now? One makes your body soften. The other makes you tighten up. And when your body tightens up consistently, you stop opening up. Now here's something subtle but important. If you grew up feeling misunderstood or emotionally dismissed, you might normalize this dynamic. You might tell yourself, this is just how relationships are. No one is perfect. At least he loves me. And yes, no one is perfect. But emotional safety isn't about perfection. It's about willingness. Willingness to sit with your feelings. Willingness to understand your perspective. Willingness to stay present when it's uncomfortable. Without that, love starts to feel unstable. You start craving reassurance more often. You start questioning whether you're asking for too much. You start feeling anxious even when he says, I love you. Because words don't regulate your nervous system. Consistency and emotional presence do. Let me ask you something honestly. When he says he loves you, does your body relax? Or does part of you still feel unsettled? That unsettled feeling isn't drama. It's information. And in the final part, we're going to talk about how to stop begging to be seen and start becoming someone who expects emotional depth without shrinking. This is where things shift. Because once you realize you feel unseen, you have two choices. You either keep shrinking, or you start standing in your emotional truth, calmly. Not dramatically. Not aggressively. Not with ultimatums. Just clearly. Becoming seen doesn't mean demanding constant reassurance. It means saying things like, when I open up and it gets brushed off, I shut down. I don't need you to fix it. I just need you to understand it. That's not needy. That's emotionally honest. And here's the important part. You say it once clearly, and then you watch. You watch how he responds. Does he get defensive? Does he minimize again? Or does he lean in and try? Secure women don't beg to be understood. They express themselves, and then they observe. Because emotional safety isn't something you can force. It's something that either grows or doesn't. Let me ask you something gently. Have you been over-explaining your feelings just to feel heard? Have you been trying to translate your emotions into something more acceptable? That's exhausting. And it slowly disconnects you from yourself. Becoming her, the emotionally secure version of you, doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop convincing. You stop shrinking to keep peace. You stop pretending you're fine when you're not. And if someone consistently cannot meet you emotionally, you don't chase deeper connection alone. You reevaluate. Because love without emotional depth will always feel incomplete. And you are not too much for wanting to feel understood. You're just someone who needs emotional attunement. That's not dramatic. That's mature. So if you've been feeling unseen, this isn't a sign that you're broken. It's a sign that your emotional needs are asking to be acknowledged. And the woman you're becoming, she doesn't silence those needs. She expresses them calmly. And she chooses relationships where her inner world is welcomed, not tolerated. That's emotional security. That's growth. Let's end this somewhere honest. Sometimes the real question is, does he love me? It's, can I be fully myself here? Because you can survive in a relationship where you feel unseen. You can function. You can smile. You can even stay for years. But you'll always feel slightly guarded. And that guarded feeling shows up in small ways. You hesitate before bringing something up. You downplay what hurts you. You over-explain so you won't be misunderstood. You try to present your emotions in the right way. That's not emotional safety. That's emotional negotiation. Now here's the quiet test. When you imagine expressing your full truth, do you feel calm? Or do you feel anxious? If you feel anxious, to be honest, your body is telling you something. Safety doesn't mean there are no disagreements. Safety means disagreements don't threaten connection. You don't fear being labeled dramatic. You don't fear being dismissed. You don't fear losing love because you expressed a need. Let me ask you something softly. If you stopped shrinking tomorrow, if you stopped editing your feelings, would the relationship feel stronger or more unstable? That answer tells you everything. Because the right connection doesn't require you to become smaller. It invites you to become clearer. And clarity is not confrontation. It's calm honesty. Becoming her, the emotionally secure version of you, means you stop begging to be understood. You speak once clearly, and then you watch the response. If someone truly values you, they adjust. If someone consistently avoids emotional depth, you don't twist yourself trying to earn it. You decide whether this environment matches your needs. And that's maturity. You're not asking for too much. You're asking for emotional presence. And if love feels lonely, it's okay to question why. Because real love doesn't just say, I love you. It makes you feel seen when you speak. And you deserve that. That's becoming her.